Chapter 5. 2 weeks. Kieran had thought he understood what loss felt like. He'd buried his mate, held his newborn daughter as she took her last breath, and lived through the aftermath of having his heart carved out of his chest with surgical precision. But this, watching his sons waste away with grief while he remained powerless to fix it, this was a different kind of hell entirely. Ethan hadn't spoken in 3 days. Not a word, not even to Owen, who was handling Maya's absence by throwing tantrums that shook the entire house. The new nanny, a competent beta female named Sarah who came with excellent references, had lasted exactly 4 days before Owen bit her hard enough to draw blood and Ethan locked himself in his mother's closet, refusing to come out. "They hate me," Sarah had said on her way out the door, her professional composure cracked beyond repair. "I've never had children actively hate me before, Mr. Blackthorne. They want that other woman, and they're going to punish anyone who tries to take her place." Now Kieran stood in the kitchen at 6 in the morning, staring at 2 untouched plates of pancakes, while Mrs. Chun watched him with the kind of disappointment that could strip paint. "They're not eating again," she said, though they both knew it wasn't really a question. "I can see that." Kieran's voice was rougher than he'd intended. He hadn't been sleeping well, or at all, really. The house felt wrong without Maya's presence, like someone had removed all the oxygen from the air. "The new nanny starts Monday," he added, though the words felt hollow even to him. Mrs. Chen's sharp intake of breath was the only warning he got before she exploded. "Another nanny?" Her voice rose to a pitch that could shatter glass. "Another stranger for those babies to reject while they pine away for the woman who actually loved them?" "Mrs. Chun." "No." She slammed her dish rag onto the counter with enough force to make the dishes jump. "I've worked for this family for 43 years. I changed your diapers, boy, and I held you when your parents died. So you're going to listen to me." Kieran found himself taking an involuntary step backward. He'd seen Mrs. Chun angry before, but never like this, never with the kind of fury that made even an alpha want to submit. "That girl loved you," she continued, her voice shaking with emotion. "Loved you and those boys more than life itself. She would have died for any of you without a second thought. And you let her walk away for a dead woman who's never coming back." The words hit like physical blows. "Rebecca was my mate. Rebecca is gone." Mrs. Chen's voice cracked like a whip. "Gone, Kieran. And while you've been busy building shrines to her memory, you've let the best thing that's happened to this family in 6 months slip through your fingers. Maya left because you broke her heart." Tears were streaming down the older woman's face now. She left because she couldn't bear to love someone who would never love her back. Because she was tired of being invisible in her own life. Kieran felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What do you mean, invisible?" Mrs. Chun wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, but her voice remained steady. "When was the last time you asked Maya how she was doing? Really asked, not just whether the boys were eating or sleeping well. When was the last time you noticed that she'd lost weight, that she barely ate dinner because she was too busy making sure everyone else was fed? When was the last time you treated her like a person instead of just another household appliance?" The questions hit their mark with devastating accuracy. Kieran tried to remember the last conversation he'd had with Maya that wasn't about the twins, the last time he'd noticed what she was wearing or whether she seemed tired. The memories were there, but they were buried under months of taking her presence for granted. "She had a journal," Mrs. Chin continued, her voice gentler now but no less cutting. "Left it behind in her rush to pack. It's on her desk if you want to understand what you threw away." Kieran found himself climbing the stairs to Maya's room, former room, without conscious decision. The space felt hollow, stripped of the personal touches that had made it hers. But there, on the small desk by the window, sat a leather-bound journal. He should leave it alone. Should respect her privacy, even in her absence. But the desperate need to understand what had gone wrong, to find some clue about how to fix his son's broken hearts, overrode his better judgment. The first entry was dated 6 months ago, the day after she'd started working for them. E&O finally fell asleep without nightmares. "Small victory, but I'll take it. Kay barely looked at me during dinner. Not sure if that's better or worse than the hostile stares from the first week. At least hostile means he sees me." Kieran's chest tightened. He flipped through more pages, finding entry after entry that painted a picture of a woman trying desperately to heal a broken family while slowly breaking apart herself. 3 weeks now. The boys are starting to trust me, I think. Owen actually smiled today when I sang the lullaby. Kay walked by the living room while I was playing with them and stopped for a moment. Almost looked like he might join us. But then his phone rang and the moment was gone. Found Kay in his office again, surrounded by photos of Rebecca. Wanted to comfort him, but what right do I have? I'm just the hired help. Still, seeing him in that much pain, it makes my chest ache. The boys asked why Papa doesn't eat with us anymore. Didn't know what to tell them. How do you explain to 5-year-olds that their father is drowning in grief, and we're all just trying to keep our heads above water? Kieran's hands were shaking now. He turned more pages, watching Maya's careful handwriting chronicle his family's slow healing, and her own slow destruction. He told me today that I give the best hugs in the whole world. Nearly broke down crying right there. When was the last time someone needed my hugs? When was the last time I mattered to anyone? Kay smiled at me today. Actually smiled, not just that polite expression he uses with the staff. It was probably nothing, maybe he was thinking about Rebecca. But for a moment I let myself imagine what it would be like if he saw me. Really saw me. Bad day. Found myself crying in the laundry room for no reason. Or maybe there is a reason. Maybe it's because I'm falling in love with a man who looks right through me. Maybe it's because I've spent so long taking care of everyone else that I've forgotten how to take care of myself. The entries became shorter, more fragmented as time went on. But scattered throughout were other letters. Ones that made Kieran's heart stop completely. My dearest Emma, you would be 9 now. Old enough to roll your eyes at my terrible jokes and ask for your own phone. I wonder if you'd like the twins, they're about the age you were when I lost you. They make me laugh, baby girl. For the first time since you died, I remember what it feels like to be happy. Do you think it's wrong that I love them? Not the same way I loved you. Nothing could ever be the same as that. But they've carved out their own space in my heart, and sometimes I catch myself forgetting that they're not really mine. I dream about you sometimes. You're playing with Ethan and Owen in the garden, teaching them how to make flower crowns like I taught you. In my dreams, we're all family. In my dreams, their father looks at me like I matter. I miss you, baby girl. Every day, every breath. But for the first time since you died, I'm not sure I want to join you anymore. Is that terrible? Does that make me a bad mother? Kieran had to stop reading. His vision was blurred, his chest so tight he could barely breathe. Maya had lost a child. Her own daughter, and she'd never said a word. Never asked for sympathy or understanding or even acknowledgement of her pain. He forced himself to keep reading, to understand the full scope of what he'd missed. I'm in love with an impossible man. A man who sees me as convenient, useful, but never as a woman. Never as someone who might have her own needs, her own dreams, her own heart that's slowly breaking every day. Today was Rebecca's birthday. Kay spent the day in his office with her photos, and I spent it pretending my heart wasn't shattering. The twins asked why Papa was sad, and I explained about missing people we love. They asked if I missed anyone, and I almost told them about Emma. Almost told them that I understand their grief better than anyone. But I didn't, because that's not my role here. I'm the nanny, the hired help, the woman who fixes things and asks for nothing in return. The final entries were the most devastating. I can't do this anymore. Can't watch him grieve for her while I disappear into the background. Can't pretend that caring for her children is enough when what I really want is to be part of this family. Really part of it. Belle was right. I'm dying here inch by inch, day by day. The boys deserve better than a nanny who's slowly falling apart. Kay deserves. Well, he deserves to figure out how to live again without using me as a crutch. Tonight I told him I was leaving. Told him I loved him, and he looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Even then, even when I was pouring my heart out, all he could think about was how my leaving would affect the boys. Never how it might affect him. Never how it was affecting me. I'm packing tonight. Colorado in the morning. Maybe there I can remember who I was before I became invisible. Kieran closed the journal with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The silence in the empty room was deafening, broken only by the sound of his own ragged breathing. She'd been grieving her own child while helping his sons heal from losing their mother. She'd been dying inside while making sure everyone else in his house felt alive. She'd been in love with him while he'd been too buried in his own pain to see her at all. And he'd let her walk away. Dear God, he whispered to the empty room. What have I done? A soft knock interrupted his breakdown. Mrs. Chun stood in the doorway, her face gentler than he'd seen it in weeks. Did you read it? She asked quietly. Kieran nodded, not trusting his voice. Those boys upstairs are wasting away without her, Mrs. Chun continued. And you look like death warmed over. So what are you going to do about it? Kieran looked up at her, this woman who'd been more mother to him than his own had ever had the chance to be. I don't know if I can fix this. I don't know if she'll even want to see me. Maybe not, Mrs. Chen agreed. But you owe it to her, and to yourself, to try. That girl deserves to know that someone sees her, someone values her for more than what she can do for other people. What if it's too late? Mrs. Chen's smile was sad but determined. Then at least you'll know you tried. But Kieran, if you go after her, you better be sure. Don't break that girl's heart twice. The flight to Colorado was the longest 6 hours of Kieran's life. He'd left Mrs. Chun in charge of the twins with strict instructions to call if anything went wrong, though both boys had perked up slightly when he'd told them he was going to find Maya. Are you bringing her home, Papa? Owen had asked, his golden eyes bright with hope for the first time in weeks. I'm going to try, Kieran had promised, though he had no idea how he was going to keep that promise. Belle had given him the address reluctantly, making him swear that he wasn't going to make things worse for Maya. The Riverside Pack lived in an exclusive gated community in Aspen, all pristine lawns and mountain views that probably cost more per month than most people made in a year. The Richardson house was a monument to wealth and status, all sharp angles and floor-to-ceiling windows that revealed perfectly appointed rooms where no one actually seemed to live. Kieran stood on the front steps, his heart hammering against his ribs, and pressed the doorbell. A stern-faced beta woman answered the door, her expression immediately shifting to disapproval when she took in his travel-rumpled appearance. Deliveries go to the service entrance, she said, starting to close the door. I'm not a delivery person. Kieran caught the door before it could close completely. I'm here to see Maya Rivers. Miss Rivers is working. She's not allowed personal visitors during working hours. Then I'll wait until she's off duty. The woman's nostrils flared as she caught his scent, her posture immediately shifting to submission when she realized she was facing an alpha. Sir, I'll need to check with Alpha Richardson. Check with me about what? The voice that interrupted was smooth, cultured, and cold as winter. Alpha Richardson appeared behind the housekeeper, a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and the kind of presence that spoke of old money and older power. This gentleman wants to see Miss Rivers, the housekeeper explained quickly. Richardson's pale eyes assessed Kieran with the calculating look of a man used to measuring others' worth. And you are? Kieran Blackthorne. Maya worked for my family before coming here. Ah yes, the previous employer. Richardson's smile was sharp and entirely without warmth. Miss Rivers mentioned you. Something about a custody dispute, wasn't it? The dismissive tone made Kieran's teeth clench. I need to speak with her. I'm afraid that's not possible. Miss Rivers is working, and I don't allow my staff to be disturbed by personal matters during business hours. When will she be available? She won't be. Richardson stepped fully into the doorway, blocking Kieran's view of the house's interior. Miss Rivers is contracted to my household for the next 2 years. Her previous life, including any complications from her former employment, are no longer her concern. The possessive way Richardson said my household made something cold and dangerous unfurl in Kieran's chest. She's not property. She has the right to speak with whoever she chooses. Actually, according to the terms of her contract, she doesn't. Richardson's smile grew wider, clearly enjoying the power play. Miss Rivers agreed to very specific conditions when she accepted this position. No outside entanglements, no personal visitors, complete dedication to her duties here. She belongs to this household now. Belongs. The word hit Kieran like a slap. He could smell Maya somewhere in the house, that sweet, warm scent that had become as necessary to him as breathing. But she might as well have been on another planet. I just need 5 minutes, Kieran said, hating the desperation he could hear in his own voice. I'm afraid that's impossible. Now, I suggest you leave before I call security. Richardson's voice carried the subtle threat of an alpha used to getting his way. Miss Rivers has made her choice. She's moved on, and I suggest you do the same. The door closed with quiet finality, leaving Kieran standing on the pristine front steps with his heart in his throat and no idea how to fix the worst mistake of his life. Somewhere behind those perfect walls, Maya was working for people who saw her as nothing more than hired help. Exactly what he'd been doing for months without even realizing it. The difference was that Richardson was honest about his expectations, while Kieran had been too blind to see what he was taking for granted. He walked back to his rental car on unsteady legs, Maya's journal entries echoing in his head. I'm in love with an impossible man, invisible in my own life. What right do I have? For the first time since Rebecca's death, Kieran understood what he'd lost. Not just a nanny or a solution to his childcare problems, but the woman who'd slowly, quietly, completely saved his family while asking for nothing in return. And now she was trapped behind the walls of a house that treated her like furniture, working for a man who saw her exactly the way Kieran had, as useful, convenient, and utterly replaceable. The irony was devastating. He'd finally realized he was in love with Maya Rivers. He just might be too late to do anything about it. Chapter 6. Kieran didn't leave Colorado. Instead, he checked into a hotel 3 blocks from the Richardson estate and spent the night pacing his room like a caged wolf, Maya's journal entries burning in his memory. By dawn, he'd made a decision that would have seemed impossible just days ago. He was going to fight for her. Not because his sons needed her, though they did. Not because she made his life easier, though she had. But because somewhere between her first day in his house and her last, Maya Rivers had become essential to him in ways that had nothing to do with childcare and everything to do with the way she'd quietly, completely, saved his heart without him even realizing it was happening. He spent the morning making calls, to his lawyer, to PAC contacts in Colorado, to anyone who might have information about the Riverside PAC's business practices. What he learned made his blood boil. Richardson's contracts were notorious in supernatural legal circles for being exploitative and nearly impossible to break. Several Omegas had tried to leave his employ over the years, only to find themselves trapped by clauses that essentially made them indentured servants. The man had perfected the art of legal slavery, wrapped in expensive suits and palatial homes. But Maya hadn't signed that contract as a desperate, packless Omega with no other options. She'd signed it as a professional with references, skills, and a spotless record. There were laws protecting workers in her position, laws that Richardson was betting she didn't know about. By noon, Kieran was back at the Richardson estate with a lawyer in tow and a very different attitude than he'd had the day before. The same stern-faced housekeeper answered the door, but this time her disapproval was mixed with wariness when she saw the legal briefcase and Kieran's grimly determined expression. Alpha Richardson isn't seeing visitors. He'll see me, Kieran said, pushing past her into the marble foyer. Tell him Kieran Blackthorne is here to discuss Miss Rivers' employment contract. And tell him I brought my attorney. Richardson appeared within minutes, his cultured composure intact but his eyes sharp with calculation. Mr. Blackthorne, I thought I made it clear yesterday that Miss Rivers is unavailable. And I thought I made it clear that I needed to speak with her. Kieran's voice carried the full weight of his alpha authority, filling the space between them with tension. But since you seem to think you own her, let's discuss the legalities of that assumption. The lawyer stepped forward, a sharp-eyed woman who specialized in supernatural employment law. Mr. Richardson, I'm Jennifer Walsh. I represent Mr. Blackthorne and, as of this morning, Miss Rivers. We need to discuss some irregularities in her employment contract. Richardson's mask slipped slightly. Miss Rivers entered into that contract voluntarily. Under false pretenses, Walsh interrupted smoothly. The contract you presented contains several clauses that violate Colorado's supernatural worker protection laws. The isolation requirements, the prohibition on personal visitors, the excessive penalty clauses for early termination, all illegal when applied to a skilled professional. I don't know what you're trying to. Additionally, Walsh continued, Miss Rivers was never properly informed of her rights under state law, which makes the entire contract voidable. She has every right to terminate her employment immediately without penalty. Kieran watched Richardson's face cycle through anger, calculation, and finally resignation. The man was a bully who preyed on vulnerable people, but when faced with actual legal consequences, he folded like a house of cards. Fine, Richardson said through gritted teeth. But she'll have to tell me herself that she wants to leave. I won't have it said that I forced out a member of my household. Then bring her here, Kieran said. Now. Richardson's smile was sharp with malice. Oh, I think you'll find that Miss Rivers has settled in quite well with us. She may not be as eager to leave as you think. He disappeared deeper into the house, leaving Kieran to pace the foyer while his lawyer reviewed documents and his heart hammered against his ribs. What if Richardson was right? What if Maya had decided she was better off here, away from the complications of his family and his grief? 10 minutes later, footsteps echoed in the hallway, and Kieran turned to see Maya walking toward him. She looked different, thinner, tired, with shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there when she'd left his house. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and she wore a crisp uniform that made her look like every other piece of expensive furniture in Richardson's pristine home. But when she saw him, something flickered in her dark eyes, surprise, pain, and underneath it all, a carefully banked hope that made his chest ache. Kieran. His name came out barely above a whisper. What are you doing here? Coming to take you home, he said, the words falling out before he could stop them. Maya's face went carefully blank. This is my home now. No. Kieran stepped closer, close enough to smell the faint scent of sadness that clung to her like perfume. This is a job. A cage. You're not living here, Maya. You're surviving. Mr. Blackthorne, Richardson interjected smoothly, moving to stand possessively close to Maya. I think you're projecting your own guilt onto Miss Rivers' situation. She's quite content here. Are you? Kieran asked, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. Content. For a moment her mask slipped, and he saw the truth, the loneliness, the regret, the part of her that was slowly withering away in this sterile house. But then Richardson's hand landed on her shoulder, and the walls went back up. I'm fine, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Miss Rivers, Walsh said gently, are you aware that your employment contract contains several illegal clauses? You have the right to terminate your employment immediately without penalty. Maya's eyes widened slightly. What? The isolation requirements, the visitor restrictions, the excessive termination fees, all violations of Colorado law, Walsh explained. You're free to leave any time you choose. That's ridiculous, Richardson snapped, but there was panic creeping into his voice. Miss Rivers is perfectly happy with her arrangement. No, she's not. Kieran's voice cut through Richardson's bluster like a blade. Look at her. Really look at her. She's disappearing in front of your eyes, and you don't even care because she's convenient. How dare you? I dare because I love her. The words exploded out of Kieran with the force of a confession he'd been too afraid to make. I love her, and I let her walk away because I was too much of a coward to fight for her. But I'm fighting now. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya stared at him with wide eyes, her face cycling through disbelief, hope, and something that looked like fury. Now you love me? Her voice was quiet, deadly. Now, when I'm finally somewhere you can't just take me for granted? Maya! No. She stepped away from Richardson's possessive grip, but she also stepped away from Kieran. Both of you stop. Just stop talking about me like I'm not standing right here. The authority in her voice made both alphas fall silent. Maya looked between them, her dark eyes blazing with an anger that had been building for months. I am not a prize to be won, she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. I'm not a position to be filled or a problem to be solved. I'm a person. A woman with my own wants and needs and dreams, and I am so tired of being fought over like I'm a piece of property. Miss Rivers, Richardson started. You. Maya rounded on him with unexpected ferocity. You offered me a job and turned it into a prison. You isolated me from everyone I cared about and made me think I had no choice but to stay. That ends now. Richardson's face flushed with anger, but before he could respond, Maya had turned her attention to Kieran. And you. Her voice trembled with emotion. You come here talking about love and fighting for me, but where was that fight when I was dying inside your house? Where was that love when I was begging you to see me as more than just hired help? Maya, please. I spent months watching you grieve for Rebecca, and I never once asked you to stop loving her. I never wanted to replace her or compete with her memory. All I wanted was for you to choose me. Not need me, not depend on me, but choose me. As myself. As Maya. Kieran felt like she'd reached into his chest and squeezed his heart. I am choosing you. That's why I'm here. No, you're here because your sons are falling apart without me. You're here because your life is harder without me. But that's not the same thing as wanting me for who I am. The accusation hit home because there was truth in it. Kieran's first instinct when the twins started struggling had been to get Maya back to fix things. It had taken reading her journal, understanding the depth of her pain, to realize that she wasn't just the solution to his problems. She was the woman he'd fallen in love with without even knowing it. You're right, he said quietly. At first, that's exactly why I came. Because the boys need you, because I couldn't handle losing anyone else. But Maya, reading your journal, seeing what I put you through, I realized something. She waited, her arms crossed defensively over her chest. I realized that somewhere between that first night in the closet and the day you left, you became essential to me. Not because of what you did for my family, but because of who you are. Because you're brave enough to love broken people, strong enough to heal wounds that aren't yours, and stubborn enough to keep trying even when it's killing you. Maya's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. That's not enough, Kieran. What do you mean? You say you love me, but you're terrified of loving me. You're so afraid of losing someone again that you'd rather keep me at arm's length than risk your heart. Her voice broke slightly. I can't be with someone who sees loving me as a threat. The words hit Kieran like physical blows because they were absolutely true. He was terrified. Loving Rebecca and losing her had nearly destroyed him, and the thought of going through that kind of pain again made his chest tight with panic. "You're right," he admitted, his voice rough. "I am terrified. When Rebecca died, I thought I'd die too. The pain was so complete, so devastating, that I swore I'd never put myself through it again. And then you came along and made me feel things I thought were dead and buried." Maya wiped at her eyes, but she didn't look away from him. "I'm scared that if I let myself love you completely, if I let you become everything to me, losing you will finish what losing Rebecca started," he continued. "I'm scared that I don't have enough left to give you what you deserve." "What I deserve," Maya said quietly, "is to be someone's first choice. Not their consolation prize, not their safety net, not their second chance at something they lost. I deserve to be loved for who I am, not as a replacement for who I'm not." Kieran closed his eyes, the weight of his own fears crushing down on him. She was right, of course. She was always right. Maya deserved someone who could love her without reservation, without the ghost of another woman standing between them. She deserved someone who wasn't broken by grief and terror. "You do," he said, opening his eyes to meet her gaze. "You deserve all of that and more. And I don't know if I can give it to you." The honesty was brutal, but it was also necessary. Maya stared at him for a long moment, tears streaming silently down her face. "Then why are you here?" she whispered. "Because I had to try. Because even if I can't be what you need, I couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least try to tell you how I feel." Kieran's voice broke. "Because you're the best thing that's happened to my family in years, and I let my fear drive you away." "Kieran, I'm going to go," he said, stepping back before she could say anything that might give him false hope. "I'm going to go, and you're going to decide what's best for you. Not what's best for the boys, not what's easiest for me, but what's best for Maya Rivers." He turned to Walsh. "Make sure she understands her options. All of them. And make sure Richardson doesn't try to manipulate her into staying." "Mr. Blackthorne," Richardson started, but Kieran's alpha presence filled the space, making the other man step back instinctively. "If I find out you've pressured her in any way, if you so much as make her feel unwelcome if she chooses to stay, I will personally ensure that every supernatural rights organization in the country knows about your business practices. Are we clear?" Richardson nodded, his face pale. Kieran looked at Maya one last time, memorizing the way the afternoon light caught in her dark hair, the stubborn tilt of her chin, the pain in her eyes that he'd put there. "I love you," he said simply. "Maybe not the way you deserve to be loved, maybe not enough to overcome my own fear, but I love you. And whatever you decide, I'll respect it." He left then, walking out of the pristine house and into the Colorado sunshine with his heart in pieces. Behind him, he could hear Maya's quiet sobs, but he didn't turn around. She needed space to think, space to decide what she wanted without his presence clouding her judgment. The flight back to Montana felt like the longest journey of his life. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away, two 5-year-old boys were hatching a plan that would have impressed military strategists. "Owen, do you remember the password for Papa's computer?" Ethan whispered as they huddled together in the playroom, surrounded by toys they had no interest in playing with. "It's Mama's birthday," Owen replied, his golden eyes bright with determination. "But why do we need it?" "Because we're going to call Miss Maya. Every night. Until she comes home." Owen's face scrunched with confusion. "But Papa said she doesn't want to come home." "Papa's wrong," Ethan said with the absolute certainty of childhood. "Miss Maya loves us. And we love her. That means she's family, and family doesn't give up on each other." That night, after Mrs. Chun had tucked them into bed and Kieran had disappeared into his office with another bottle of whiskey, the twins crept downstairs to the study. Ethan climbed onto the big leather chair and carefully typed in the password while Owen kept watch. The video call software opened easily. They'd watched their father use it for business calls dozens of times. Finding Maya's contact information was harder, but eventually Ethan remembered seeing her name in their father's email contacts. When Maya's face appeared on the screen, both boys burst into simultaneous tears of relief. "Miss Maya," Owen sobbed. "We miss you so much." Maya's face crumpled when she saw them. She was in what looked like a small, sterile bedroom, her hair down around her shoulders and her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Oh, my beautiful boys," she whispered. "I miss you too. So much." "Why did you leave us?" Ethan asked, his voice small and broken. "Don't you love us anymore?" "I love you more than anything in the whole world," Maya said fiercely. "Never doubt that. Not for a single second." "Then come home," Owen said simply. "Please, Miss Maya. We need you." Maya closed her eyes, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. It's complicated, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups have problems that are hard to fix. Is it because of Papa? Ethan asked with the intuitive understanding that made him seem older than his years. Is he being stupid again? Despite everything, Maya laughed, a watery sound that was more sob than humor. Your papa's not stupid, baby. He's just hurt. And scared. We're all hurt and scared, Owen pointed out with devastating logic. But we still love each other. Maya's face crumpled completely. You're right. You're absolutely right. So will you come home? Ethan pressed. Will you come back to us? Maya looked at their faces, so hopeful, so trusting, so full of love, and felt something shift inside her chest. These children needed her, yes. But more than that, she needed them. They were her family in every way that mattered, and she'd let fear and pride drive her away from them. I don't know if I can, sweetheart, she said honestly. But I promise I'll think about it, okay? Can you give me a little more time to figure things out? The twins exchanged a look that would have worried any adult who saw it. Okay, Miss Maya, Ethan said sweetly. We'll give you time. But we're going to call you every night until you come home. Every single night, Owen added with determination. Because that's what family does. As the call ended and the twins snuck back upstairs, Maya sat in her sterile bedroom and realized that a 5-year-old had just solved a problem that had been tearing her apart for weeks. It wasn't about choosing between Kieran's love and her self-respect. It wasn't about replacing Rebecca or competing with a ghost. It was about family. About the people who loved you not because you were perfect, but because you were you. About the home you built with the people who mattered, even when it was messy and complicated and sometimes broke your heart. Ethan and Owen were her family. She'd been their mother in every way except biology long before she'd fallen in love with their father. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop running from that truth. Tomorrow, she would make some calls of her own. Tonight, she would start planning her way home. Chapter 7. Maya had been working for the Richardson family for exactly 48 hours when her carefully constructed new life imploded in the most spectacular way possible. She was in the pristine playroom, trying to coax Richardson's 3 spoiled children into something resembling educational activity, when commotion erupted from the front of the house. Raised voices, the housekeeper's sharp protests, and underneath it all, 2 familiar little voices that made Maya's heart stop. We want Miss Maya. We know she's here. Young masters, you cannot simply. We're not leaving without her. Maya dropped the expensive educational toy she'd been holding and ran toward the foyer, her heart hammering against her ribs. It couldn't be. There was no way. But there they were. Ethan and Owen Blackthorne stood in Richardson's marble entryway like 2 small, determined warriors, their identical faces streaked with tears and dirt, their school clothes wrinkled and grass-stained. They each clutched a small backpack, and Owen held what looked like a crumpled bus ticket in his tiny fist. Miss Maya. Owen spotted her first and launched himself across the foyer with the reckless abandon of a child who'd found his safe harbor. Ethan was right behind him, and Maya caught them both as they crashed into her legs, their small bodies shaking with exhaustion and relief. Oh my God, Maya breathed, dropping to her knees to gather them properly into her arms. What are you doing here? How did you? We took the bus, Ethan said proudly, his face buried against her neck. Like big boys. We used our money, Owen added, pulling back to show her the crumpled ticket. From Mama's special box. Maya's blood ran cold. You used your inheritance? Boys, how much did this cost? All of it, Ethan said matter-of-factly. But it was worth it to find you. Before Maya could fully process the magnitude of what they'd done, Richardson's voice cut through the reunion like a blade. What exactly is going on here? The alpha stood at the top of the marble staircase, his face thunderous as he took in the scene below. Miss Rivers, who are these children? Maya stood slowly, keeping the twins close to her sides. These are Ethan and Owen Blackthorne. They're trespassing, Richardson snapped, descending the stairs with predatory grace. And you're going to explain to me right now how 2 children managed to track you down to my private residence. Maya stopped herself before she could say my boys, but the words hung in the air anyway. I used to care for them. Used to being the operative phrase. Richardson's pale eyes were cold as winter. Whatever attachment you formed to your previous employer's children is no longer your concern. I'll call their father to collect them. No. Both twins spoke in unison, their small hands clutching at Maya's uniform with desperate strength. We're not going back without Miss Maya, Ethan declared, his 5-year-old voice carrying surprising authority. She belongs with us. Yeah, Owen chimed in. We're a family. Richardson's face flushed with barely controlled anger. Miss Rivers, handle this. Now. These children are disrupting my household, and I will not tolerate. Where's Papa? Maya interrupted, her mind racing through the implications of what the twins had done. Does he know where you are? Ethan and Owen exchanged a guilty look. We left him a note, Ethan said in a small voice. After we were already gone, Owen added. Maya's heart nearly stopped. Kieran would be frantic. The twins had disappeared from school, used their entire inheritance, and traveled across state lines to find her. This wasn't just running away. This was a grand gesture of love and desperation that could have gone catastrophically wrong. You could have been hurt, she said, her voice shaking as she imagined all the terrible things that could have happened to two small children traveling alone. You could have gotten lost or taken by bad people or... But we didn't, Ethan said simply. We found you. We're smart, Owen added proudly. We remembered the address from when Papa was on the phone with the lawyer lady. Richardson's patience finally snapped. Enough of this nonsense. Miss Rivers, you will call their father immediately and arrange for their removal from my property. If they're not gone within the hour, I'm calling PAC security to have them forcibly removed. The threat hung in the air like poison. Maya looked down at the twins, her twins, regardless of biology or legal definitions, and saw their faces crumple with fear and betrayal. You can't make us leave Miss Maya, Ethan whispered, tears starting to fall again. We just found her. We won't go, Owen declared, wrapping his arms around Maya's waist with fierce determination. You can't make us. Richardson's smile was sharp and cruel. Actually, I can. This is my territory, my house, and these children have no legal right to be here. Security will remove them by whatever means necessary. The casual threat against the children, her children, ignited something primal and protective in Maya's chest. She looked at Richardson with new eyes, seeing not just an arrogant alpha, but a man who would traumatize two innocent children to prove a point. You're right, she said quietly, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. They don't belong here. The twins looked up at her with expressions of such betrayal that it nearly broke her heart. But neither do I, Maya continued, her voice gaining strength. I quit. Richardson's face went white, then red with fury. You what? I quit. Effective immediately. Maya reached behind her neck and untied her uniform apron, letting it fall to the marble floor with quiet finality. I won't work for someone who threatens children to get his way. You can't quit, Richardson sputtered. You have a contract, which your own lawyer confirmed was illegal and unenforceable, Maya reminded him sweetly. Remember? I'm free to leave any time I choose. If you walk out that door, you'll never work in this industry again, Richardson threatened, his alpha presence trying to intimidate her into submission. I have connections in every major PAC from here to New York. No one will hire you. Maya looked down at the twins, who were staring up at her with expressions of dawning hope and wonder. I'm not looking for another job, she said, reaching for their hands. I'm going home. The next few hours were a blur of frantic phone calls, travel arrangements, and two extremely excited 5-year-olds who bounced in their airplane seats like they'd won the lottery. Maya called Kieran from the airport, her heart in her throat as she waited for him to answer. Maya! His voice was raw, desperate. Please tell me you have them. Please tell me they're safe. They're safe, she said quickly. They're with me. We're at the Denver airport, and we'll be home in 4 hours. The sound that came through the phone might have been a sob or a prayer. Thank God. I thought, when I found the note, when the school said they'd just disappeared. They took a bus, Maya said, watching Ethan show Owen something in the airport gift shop. Used their inheritance money to buy tickets. They said they left you a note. Gone to get Miss Maya. Love E&O, Kieran recited, his voice thick with emotion. That was it. Just those 7 words, and they were gone. Maya's chest tightened. Kieran, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. If I hadn't left. Don't. His voice was firm. Don't apologize for loving my sons. Don't apologize for being the kind of person they'd crossed the country to find. The words hit Maya like a physical blow, warm and devastating in their simple truth. We'll be home tonight, she said softly. Flight lands at 9:15. I'll be there, Kieran promised. Maya, thank you. For keeping them safe, for bringing them home. For being you. The flight home felt like the longest and shortest journey of Maya's life. The twins chattered nonstop about their adventure, treating their cross-country bus trip like the greatest accomplishment of their young lives. They were proud of themselves, and despite her lingering terror over what could have gone wrong, Maya found herself proud of them too. They'd identified a problem, their family was broken, and they'd taken action to fix it. Never mind that their solution involved grand theft of their own inheritance and interstate travel without supervision. They'd seen what they wanted and gone after it with the single-minded determination that only children possessed. "Miss Maya," Owen said as the plane began its descent toward Montana, "are you really coming home forever?" Maya looked at his earnest little face, at Ethan's matching expression of hope and trust, and felt something settle in her chest that had been restless for months. "Yes," she said simply. "I'm coming home forever." Kieran was waiting at the gate when they landed, his face haggard with exhaustion and relief. The twins spotted him first and broke away from Maya to launch themselves at their father with the same enthusiasm they'd shown her that morning. "Papa!" Owen cried, wrapping his small arms around Kieran's neck. "We found her. We brought Miss Maya home." "We're heroes," Ethan declared proudly. "Like in the movies." Kieran gathered his sons close, his golden eyes bright with unshed tears as he breathed in their familiar scent, and assured himself they were really safe. Over their heads, his gaze found Maya's, and the naked gratitude in something deeper, something that looked like hope, made her chest ache. "Thank you," he mouthed silently. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. They had things to discuss, decisions to make about what came next. But for now, it was enough that they were all together, all safe, all home. The drive back to the house was filled with the twins' excited chatter about their adventure. Though Maya noticed they carefully edited out the scarier parts, like the moment when they'd realized they didn't have enough money for food and had to share a single candy bar for lunch, or when a strange man at the bus station had tried to talk to them before a kind woman had intervened. By the time they pulled into the familiar driveway, both boys were starting to crash from their adrenaline high. They stumbled into the house on unsteady legs, suddenly looking very much like the 5-year-olds they were instead of the intrepid adventurers they'd been pretending to be. Mrs. Chen met them at the door, her face cycling through relief, joy, and exasperation in rapid succession. "Those boys," she said, pulling them into fierce hugs. "Giving us all heart attacks like that. Don't you ever scare us like that again, do you hear me?" "We had to," Ethan said seriously. "Miss Maya was sad in Colorado. We could tell when we called her. And Papa was sad here," Owen added. "So we fixed it." Mrs. Chen's sharp eyes moved between Maya and Kieran, taking in the careful distance they maintained and the tension that still stretched between them despite the evening's reunion. "Did you now?" she said thoughtfully. "Well, I suppose you boys know what's best for this family." "We do," Ethan said with the confidence of childhood. "And we have a plan." Maya and Kieran exchanged wary glances. If this afternoon had taught them anything, it was that the twins' plans could have far-reaching and unpredictable consequences. "What kind of plan?" Maya asked carefully. "A family meeting," Owen announced importantly. "Tomorrow after breakfast. We have things to discuss." "Very important things," Ethan agreed. "About our family and how it's going to work now that Miss Maya is home." Before either adult could respond, both boys declared themselves too tired to stay awake another minute and demanded to be tucked into bed immediately. Maya found herself following the familiar routine she'd missed so desperately, supervising teeth brushing, reading a bedtime story, singing the lullaby that always made Owen smile and Ethan drift off to sleep. "Miss Maya?" Ethan's voice was drowsy as she turned off the bedroom light. "Yes, sweetheart? Are you going to stay forever this time? Even if Papa acts stupid again?" Maya's throat closed. "I'm going to try very hard to stay forever." "Good," Owen mumbled from his bed. "'Cause we love you. And you're our family now." Maya stood in their doorway for a long moment after they'd fallen asleep, listening to their steady breathing and feeling something she'd thought was lost forever. The bone-deep certainty of belonging somewhere. She found Kieran in the kitchen, sitting at the breakfast bar with a cup of coffee that had probably gone cold hours ago. He looked up when she entered, his face carefully neutral despite the emotion she could smell rolling off him in waves. "They're asleep," she said, settling onto the stool across from him. "Good. They've had a big day." His smile was tired but genuine. Biggest adventure of their lives, probably. "They could have been hurt," Maya said, the fear finally catching up with her now that the crisis was over. "Kieran, they're 5 years old. They traveled 3 states alone because they thought I needed rescuing. They were right, weren't they?" Kieran's voice was quiet. "You did need rescuing. From Richardson, from that house, from the cage you'd built around yourself." Maya stared at him, surprised by the insight. "They're smarter than we are," he continued. They saw what we couldn't, that we're better together than apart. That whatever problems we have, we should be solving them as a family instead of running away from each other. Kieran, I know we have things to work out, he said quickly. I know I hurt you, that I was too afraid to give you what you deserved. But Maya, watching you walk away was the worst thing I've ever experienced. Worse than losing Rebecca, because that wasn't a choice. Letting you go was. Maya's heart clenched. I had to leave. I was dying there a little bit every day. I know. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel invisible again. Kieran's voice was rough with emotion. If you'll let me. Before Maya could respond, a small voice piped up from the doorway. Papa. Miss Maya? We can't sleep. They turned to find both twins standing in the kitchen entrance in their pajamas, their hair sticking up at odd angles, and their eyes bright with determination despite their claims of sleeplessness. We need to have our family meeting now, Ethan announced seriously. It can't wait, Owen agreed. It's too important. Kieran and Maya exchanged glances, both recognizing the futility of arguing with two 5-year-olds who'd already proven they were capable of extraordinary things when properly motivated. All right, Maya said gently. What's this meeting about? The twins exchanged a look, then Ethan disappeared back down the hallway. He returned a moment later carrying a folder made of construction paper and decorated with crayon drawings of stick figures holding hands. We made contracts, Owen announced proudly as Ethan spread several pieces of paper across the breakfast bar. About how our family is going to work now. Maya leaned forward to examine the twins' handiwork, her heart melting at the careful crayon writing and elaborate illustrations. The contracts were written in Ethan's surprisingly neat handwriting, with Owen's artistic additions in the margins. Contract number 1, Ethan read importantly. Miss Maya is our mom now. Not because Mama Rebecca is gone, but because families can have more than one mom. Mama Rebecca will always be our first mom who we love forever, but Miss Maya is our right-now mom who takes care of us and loves us. Maya's eyes filled with tears. The simple, beautiful logic of childhood had solved a problem that had tormented adults for months. Contract number 2. Owen took over reading. Papa has to smile more and not be sad all the time. Miss Maya makes him smile, so she has to stay forever and ever. Contract number 3. Ethan continued. We're a family now. That means we eat dinner together every night, and Miss Maya comes to school things, and we take vacations together, and nobody gets to leave without talking to everyone first. And contract number 4, Owen finished triumphantly. Papa and Miss Maya have to get married so nobody can take us away from each other ever again. We already picked out rings. He reached into his pajama pocket and pulled out 2 plastic rings from what looked like a gumball machine. Maya stared at the rings, then at the children's earnest faces, then at Kieran, who was looking at his sons with an expression of wonder and pride. Boys, she said carefully, these are very thoughtful contracts. But marriage is something Papa and I would need to talk about. We know you love each other, Ethan interrupted matter-of-factly. We're not babies. We can smell it. And you make each other happy, Owen added. When you were both here, Papa smiled more and you laughed more. So you should just get married and be happy together. The simple, devastating truth of it hung in the air between them. Maya looked at Kieran and saw her own emotions reflected in his face. Love, fear, hope, and the dawning realization that 2 5-year-olds had just presented them with a roadmap to happiness. What do you think, Miss Maya? Ethan asked seriously. Will you sign our contracts? Maya looked at the children she loved more than her own life, at the man she'd never stopped loving despite everything, at the future they could build together if they were brave enough to try. I think, she said slowly, these might be the best contracts I've ever seen. She picked up one of Owen's crayons and carefully signed her name at the bottom of each paper. Then she looked at Kieran, her heart in her throat. What about you, Papa? She asked softly. Are you ready to make this family official? Kieran looked at his sons, at the woman who'd saved them all, at the chance for happiness he'd thought was lost forever. Then he picked up a crayon and signed his name next to hers. Welcome home, Maya, he whispered. And for the first time in her life, Maya truly was. Chapter 8. 6 months later, Maya stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 5:30 in the morning, staring at her reflection and wondering how her life had become so beautifully, terrifyingly normal. The woman looking back at her wore a simple silk nightgown and had sleep-mussed hair that showed threads of premature silver. Stress from years of loss and survival that she'd stopped trying to hide. There were laugh lines around her eyes that hadn't been there a year ago, and an engagement ring on her finger that caught the early morning light. From down the hall came the familiar sounds of her family waking up, Kieran's shower running, the twins muffled arguing about who got to brush their teeth first, Mrs. Chen's voice calling up the stairs about breakfast. Normal sounds. Home sounds. It had taken 6 months of careful rebuilding to get here. 6 months of family dinners and bedtime stories, of couples counseling sessions where she and Kieran learned to navigate their trauma without drowning in it, of slowly, carefully constructing a life together that honored the past without being enslaved by it. Maya! Kieran's voice called from the bedroom. The boys are asking if you're making pancakes this morning. She smiled, running her fingers through her hair before padding back into the bedroom they now shared. Kieran was sitting on the edge of the bed, his dark hair still damp from the shower, pulling on a t-shirt that stretched across shoulders she'd learned to love with her hands as well as her eyes. I don't make pancakes, she reminded him, settling onto the bed beside him. I reheat frozen pancakes. There's a difference. Try telling them that. Kieran's arm came around her automatically, pulling her against his side in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. To them, you're a culinary genius. Maya leaned into his warmth, breathing in the scent of soap and coffee and something that was uniquely him. Even now, 6 months into their engagement, sometimes she had to remind herself that this was real. That she was allowed to love him, allowed to be loved in return, allowed to build a future instead of just surviving the present. Dr. Patterson wants to see us Thursday, she said, referring to the counselor who'd been helping them navigate the complexities of blending grief, love, and family. Something about pre-wedding preparation. Kieran's arm tightened slightly around her. Any particular reason? I think she wants to make sure we're not rushing into anything. Maya tilted her head to look at him. Are we rushing? It was a question they'd asked themselves and each other multiple times over the past months. Their engagement had happened organically. Not a grand proposal, but a quiet conversation one evening after the twins had gone to bed about whether they wanted to make their family legal as well as emotional. I don't know, Kieran said honestly. It feels right, but then again, I'm not sure I trust my own judgment when it comes to relationships anymore. This was the kind of brutal honesty they'd learned in counseling, the willingness to admit fear and uncertainty instead of pretending everything was perfect. Maya had been terrified at first, certain that acknowledging problems would make them insurmountable. But Dr. Patterson had taught them that the opposite was true. Problems left in darkness festered. Problems brought into light could be solved. I trust us, Maya said quietly. Not our individual judgment, maybe, but us. Together. The way we are now. Kieran pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Even when I have my bad days? Maya smiled against his shoulder. The bad days still came. Anniversaries of Rebecca's death, moments when grief hit him like a rogue wave, times when he retreated into himself and needed space to remember how to breathe. But they'd learned to weather those storms together instead of separately. Especially then, she said. Because you don't disappear anymore. You tell me when you're struggling, and I know how to help without taking it personally. It had been one of their biggest hurdles. Learning that Kieran's grief wasn't a rejection of Maya, and Maya's insecurities weren't an attack on Kieran's past. They'd needed outside help to understand that loving someone new didn't diminish love for someone lost, that choosing a future didn't negate the past. Miss Maya. Papa. Owen's voice carried from downstairs. Mrs. Chen says breakfast is ready and you're being slowpokes. 5-year-olds have no patience, Kieran observed, but he was smiling as he said it. 5-year-olds have perfect patience for things that matter to them, Maya corrected. And we matter to them. They found the twins already seated at the breakfast bar, their hair combed and their school clothes mostly clean, chattering to Mrs. Chun about their upcoming field trip to the Natural History Museum. The sight of them, healthy, happy, secure in their family's love, never failed to make Maya's chest tight with gratitude. There they are, Mrs. Chun said with mock disapproval. Taking their sweet time while the rest of us are ready to start the day. We were discussing important grown-up things, Ethan informed her seriously. Like what? Owen asked, always curious about adult conversations. Maya and Kieran exchanged a glance. They'd learned to be honest with the twins about most things, but some discussions were still too complex for 5-year-old minds. Like how much we love our family, Maya said, which was true enough. Oh, Owen seemed satisfied with this answer. That's easy. The answer is infinity plus 1. Infinity plus infinity, Ethan corrected his brother. Plus all the stars. Plus all the ice cream in the universe, Owen added, not to be outdone. That's a lot of love, Kieran said solemnly. Enough for everyone, Ethan agreed, then looked thoughtful. Miss Maya, are you going to change your name when you marry Papa? The question caught Maya off guard. They hadn't discussed it, and she wasn't sure how she felt about it. Taking Kieran's name felt like claiming a place in the family she already belonged to, but it also felt like erasing another piece of who she'd been before. I don't know, sweetheart. What do you think I should do? I think you should be Maya Blackthorne, Owen declared. Because then we'd all have the same name, and no one could say you don't belong with us. But Miss Maya is already our family, Ethan pointed out. Names don't make families. Love makes families. Out of the mouths of babes, Maya thought, her chest tightening with emotion. A 5-year-old had just articulated something she'd been struggling to understand for months. The morning routine proceeded with its usual organized chaos. Backpacks gathered, lunchboxes packed, last-minute searches for missing shoes. Maya found herself treasuring these ordinary moments, the beautiful mundanity of family life that she'd never thought she'd have again. As she buckled Owen into his car seat for the drive to school, he looked up at her with serious golden eyes. Miss Maya, are you nervous about marrying Papa? The question was so unexpected and perceptive that Maya paused with her hand on the seatbelt. A little bit, she admitted. Are you nervous about me marrying Papa? Owen considered this carefully. No, because you already act like our mom, and Papa already acts like your husband. The wedding is just to make it official for other people. That's very wise. I know, Owen said matter-of-factly. Ethan and I are very smart about family things. At school drop-off, both twins hugged her goodbye with the casual affection of children who never doubted she'd be there to pick them up. As Maya watched them run toward the building, she felt that familiar surge of protective love mixed with wonder that these remarkable little people had chosen her as much as she'd chosen them. The drive home was quiet, giving her time to think about the upcoming wedding. They'd planned something small and simple, just family and a few close friends in the garden behind the house. Nothing elaborate or expensive, just a celebration of the life they'd already built together. Maya had initially resisted having any kind of ceremony at all. The idea of standing in front of people and making promises felt presumptuous somehow, as if she was claiming something she hadn't earned. But Kieran had quietly pointed out that the twins wanted to see their family made official, wanted the security of knowing that the adults they loved had made binding promises to each other. It's not about proving anything to anyone else, he'd said. It's about showing Ethan and Owen that we're committed to this family for the long haul. When Maya arrived home, she found a familiar car in the driveway, Dr. Patterson's hybrid sedan. Their counselor sometimes made house calls when she felt it was important to see how couples functioned in their natural environment. Maya found them in Kieran's office, but it looked different than it had months ago. Rebecca's photos were still there, they always would be, because the twins needed their mother's memory honored, but they'd been joined by newer pictures. Maya and the twins at the zoo. Family dinners around the kitchen table. Kieran teaching Owen to ride a bike, while Maya bandaged Ethan's scraped knee. The photos told the story of a family that had grown to accommodate love instead of being diminished by it. Maya, Dr. Patterson smiled warmly as she entered. Perfect timing. Kieran and I were just discussing the wedding plans. Dr. Patricia Patterson was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and kind eyes who specialized in grief counseling and family dynamics. She'd been seeing Kieran individually since Rebecca's death, and had started working with Maya and the twins when they'd begun building their blended family. Any particular concerns? Maya asked, settling into the chair beside Kieran's. Not concerns, exactly. More like final preparations. Dr. Patterson consulted her notes. I wanted to make sure you both feel ready for this step, that you're entering marriage for the right reasons. What would be the wrong reasons? Kieran asked. Fear of being alone. Convenience. Pressure from the children. Dr. Patterson's voice was gentle but direct. I've seen couples rush into marriage because it seems like the logical next step, without really examining their motivations. Maya considered this. I love him, she said simply. I love the life we've built together. I love the family we've become. I want to make it official not because I'm afraid of losing it, but because I want to choose it every day for the rest of my life. And you, Kieran? Kieran was quiet for a moment, his hand finding Maya's automatically. For a long time, I thought I'd used up my capacity for this kind of love. I thought what I had with Rebecca was finite, and when she died, that part of me died too. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Maya taught me that love isn't finite. It's not a resource that gets depleted. It's something that grows when you nurture it. Are you worried about comparisons? About Maya feeling like she's competing with Rebecca's memory? This had been one of their biggest challenges in counseling, learning to navigate the reality of Kieran's first marriage without it overshadowing his second. Not anymore, Maya said, and meant it. I've learned that Rebecca and I aren't comparable because we're not trying to fill the same role. She was the twins' mother and Kieran's first love. I'm the woman who helped them heal and became part of their family. Both things can be true at the same time. Rebecca will always be part of this family, Kieran added. But so will Maya. There's room for both. Dr. Patterson smiled. I think you're ready. The week before the wedding passed in a blur of final preparations and nervous energy. Maya had chosen a simple dress in pale blue. Not white, because she refused to pretend she was untouched by life's complexities. The twins had insisted on matching suits and had been practicing their roles as ring bearers with the seriousness of tiny diplomats. The night before the ceremony, Maya lay awake staring at the ceiling, her mind racing despite her exhaustion. Beside her, Kieran was equally restless. Second thoughts, he asked quietly. Third and fourth thoughts, Maya admitted. Not about marrying you. About whether I deserve this happiness. It was an old fear, rooted in years of loss and survival. The idea that good things weren't meant for people like her. That happiness was borrowed and would eventually be reclaimed. Maya! Kieran turned to face her in the darkness. You know what I realized today? What? Rebecca would have liked you. If she were here, if circumstances were different, you two would have been friends. You're both strong women who put family first, who love fiercely and protect what matters to them. The words hit Maya like a revelation. She'd spent so much time thinking of Rebecca as competition that she'd never considered the possibility of kinship. Do you really think so? I know so. And I think she'd want us to be happy. I think she'd want her sons to be loved by someone who sees them as more than just her children. Who sees them as individuals worth loving on their own merit. Maya felt tears slip down her cheeks in the darkness. I do love them. So much it scares me sometimes. That's how I know this is right, Kieran said softly. Because you didn't fall in love with them to get to me. You fell in love with me because of them. Because seeing you with my sons showed me what kind of woman you are. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel possible. Maya woke early and spent the morning in quiet preparation, letting Mrs. Chun fuss over her hair while the twins provided running commentary on everything from the flower arrangements to the proper way to tie bow ties. Miss Maya, you look beautiful, Ethan said seriously as she stood in front of the mirror in her simple blue dress. Like a princess, Owen agreed. But a tough princess who could fight dragons if she had to. I don't think I'll need to fight any dragons today, Maya said, smoothing her skirt with hands that trembled slightly. You never know, Ethan said philosophically. It's good to be prepared. The ceremony itself was small and perfect. Just Mrs. Chun, Dr. Patterson, a few pack friends, and Belle, who'd flown in from her new home to serve as Maya's matron of honor. They gathered in the garden where Maya had first watched the twins play, where she'd learned to see beauty in the midst of grief. The twins walked down the makeshift aisle first, carrying rings tied to small pillows with ribbons, their faces serious with the weight of their responsibility. When they reached the front, they turned to watch Maya walk toward their father with expressions of such pride and joy that she had to blink back tears. Kieran stood waiting in a simple dark suit, his golden eyes bright with emotion as she approached. He looked nervous and happy and absolutely certain, and Maya felt her last remaining doubts dissolve like morning mist. The officiant was a kind woman from the local pack who spoke about the nature of chosen family, about the courage required to love again after loss, about the beauty of building something new from the pieces of what came before. When it came time for vows, Maya had written something simple and true. Kieran, she began, her voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. I can't promise to be Rebecca, and I don't want to be. I can't promise to fill the space she left, because that space belongs to her forever. But I can promise to create a new space, our space where we can build something entirely our own. She looked at the twins, who were watching with rapt attention. Ethan and Owen, I promise to love you not as a replacement for your mother, but as myself. I promise to honor her memory while helping you write new chapters of your story. I promise to be the mother who's here for scraped knees and homework and first heartbreaks, while never asking you to forget the mother who gave you life. Turning back to Kieran, she continued, I promise to choose this family every single day, in good times and bad, in sickness and health, in grief and joy. I promise to build a life with you that's worthy of the love that brought us together. Kieran's vows were equally simple and devastating. Maya, you came into our lives when we were broken, and you didn't try to fix us, you helped us learn to heal ourselves. You loved my sons when they were difficult to love, and you loved me when I was too scared to love you back. You made our house a home again, not by erasing what came before, but by adding what was missing. His voice broke slightly as he looked at the twins. Rebecca will always be your first mother, the one who gave you life and loved you before you took your first breath. Maya is the mother who chose you, who teaches you that family isn't just about blood, it's about showing up, again and again, even when it's hard. When the officiant pronounced them married, the twins erupted in cheers that could probably be heard 3 counties over. They tackled their parents in a group hug that nearly knocked everyone over, laughing and crying and declaring it the best day ever. The reception was equally simple. Dinner in the backyard, toasts that made everyone cry, and dancing on the patio as the sun set behind the mountains. When it came time for the traditional first dance, Maya and Kieran had barely swayed to half a song before 2 small bodies inserted themselves between them. Family dance, Owen declared. This is supposed to be a family dance. So they danced as a family, Kieran spinning Maya while the twins danced around their legs, then lifting each boy in turn while Maya laughed at their elaborate moves. It was chaotic and perfect and nothing like the elegant moment Maya had imagined, which made it absolutely right for their family. Later, after the last guests had gone home and the twins had finally fallen asleep in their beds, Maya and Kieran sat on the small balcony outside their bedroom, sharing a bottle of champagne and watching the stars emerge in the clear mountain sky. Any regrets? Kieran asked, his arm around her shoulders as she leaned against his side. Only that it took us so long to get here, Maya said honestly. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. Maya, Kieran said eventually, his voice thoughtful. I want you to know something. What's that? I love you differently than I loved Rebecca. Not less, not more, but differently. And that's okay. Maya turned to look at him, seeing the truth written in his face. Rebecca and I were young when we fell in love. We grew up together, built a life from scratch, learned how to be adults side by side. That love was innocent, I guess. Untested by real tragedy. He paused, gathering his thoughts. What I feel for you is deeper in some ways. More complex. It's the love of someone who's been broken and learned to heal. Someone who knows that happiness isn't guaranteed and chooses it anyway. It's not first love, it's last love. The kind you fight for because you know how rare it is. Maya felt tears slip down her cheeks, but they were good tears, the kind that came with relief and recognition and the end of a long journey home. I love you too, she said simply. Completely. Finally. Without reservation or comparison. Are you happy? Kieran asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. Maya considered the question seriously. Was she happy? For so many years, happiness had seemed like a luxury she couldn't afford, a feeling reserved for other people who hadn't lost everything that mattered. But sitting here in the arms of the man she loved, in the house where their children slept safely, surrounded by the life they'd built together from the ashes of their separate tragedies. Yes. She was happy. More than that, she was home. Not just in this house or this town, but in her own skin. She was Maya Blackthorne now, not because a name made her belong, but because she'd finally learned that belonging wasn't something you earned or won or stole from someone else. Belonging was something you chose, and something that chose you back. Yes, she said, settling more comfortably against Kieran's side as the first stars appeared overhead. I'm happy. I'm home. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And for the first time in her life, Maya truly, completely was. Thank you for listening to this story. Like, share, subscribe for more.